You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play.
Bitcoin, Ether, Solana, Doge, and more. Cryptocurrencies and digital assets are taking the financial world by storm. This exploding market provides everything a savvy trader needs: volatility, volume, and liquidity, provided you know how to find it. That's where we come in. Welcome to the Crypto Rundown. Each week, we'll break down the latest trading activity, trends, and developments throughout the world's leading crypto derivatives markets. If it's moving the crypto markets, then you'll find it on the Crypto Rundown. The Crypto Rundown is brought to you by Amber Data. If you're entering the digital asset class, you'll need access to granular on-chain and market data from multiple venues to power research, trading, risk management, and compliance. Amber Data delivers comprehensive data and insights into blockchain networks, crypto markets, and decentralized finance, empowering financial institutions to apply traditional finance methods to digital assets. Amber Data eliminates the infrastructure setup, integration challenges, and maintenance headaches to access digital asset data, reducing cost and time to market to enter the digital asset class. Learn more and download their digital asset data guide at www.amberdata.io. Now it's time to dive into the exploding world of crypto derivatives. It's time for the Crypto Rundown.
All right, everybody, that music means we are back. It is time to rock out on another Just the Facts, ma'am edition of the Crypto Rundown. My name, of course, Mark Longo from the OptionsInsider.com, as well as on the network upon which all of you folks are binging. Quick reminder at the top of the show on this shortened holiday week, listeners, make sure you're subscribed to the full network wherever you get your favorite podcasts. And of course, if you want to join us for awesome pro Q&As, probably going to do an early options oddities there tomorrow as well. The optionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go. We're not monsters. I'm not going to drag people in here on Thanksgiving or even on Black Friday. You want to go out there, shortened trading day. You want to do a little trading, but also probably get some deals. We're not going to step in the way of that. So pro stuff coming at you early this week. Get in there. The optionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go to learn more as we dive right on into the Bitcoin breakdown.
It's time to explore the latest trading activity, trends, and developments across the world's leading crypto market. It's time for the Bitcoin Breakdown.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Bitcoin Breakdown, the portion of the show where we break down all of the action in the big dog, the old BTC. And you know what, all of you out there who've been sweating a little bit, I know a lot of listeners to this show have been sweating a little bit. Hasn't been the best month or so out here in the crypto, and certainly in the big dog BTC. Can breathe a little bit of a sigh of relief. It seems like the sell-off, the bloodletting has abated, at least for now. So take what you can get out there, listeners. Bitcoin still lower than it was this time on the show last week. Last week on the show was a little bit north of 92,000. 92,162 coming into the start of the show today. 88,682. Now, obviously, that is lower. About almost 3,500 handles lower. 3,480 to be precise. But that said, we did obviously get a lot lower since our last show, including dipping during the nadir on Friday, hitting right around that 80K level in Bitcoin, a level we haven't seen in some time out there, listeners, and a level that certainly spooked some folks. In fact, pretty much, you got to go back to the previous big nadir back in April, right around 75,000. That's when everything got sucked down in the tariff tantrum, including Bitcoin. We got to 75,000. Some folks were thinking, oh no, here we go. Back to those levels, if not below. Luckily for all the bulls out there, the hodlers, buyers stepped in, at least for now, stabilized things a little bit, hanging out in the high 80s, which again, below that pivotal 100K level, but also back above 80K. So I think folks will take what they can get. Let's get down to business on the vol and skew front, shall we? Remember, all this data coming at you courtesy of Greg and his team over there at Amber Data. So you really you have no excuse. It's a free GUI. Go check it out if you're trading any of these products. You need to be armed with the info. Weekly vol actually coming in a little bit. You know, once we bounced off that really important psychological level, that next barrier of 80K, it seems like folks breathing a little bit of a sigh of relief. Vol coming in ever so slightly on the weekly vol front. We were at a 52 on the show last week, 49.6. And then heading out to the 30-day vol front, listeners. Interestingly enough, getting a little bit spicier out there. We got a 48.5 on the 30-day vol front. Last week, 50.85. This week's up about 2 1/3 points on the week. And hanging out where the holders like to play, 180-day vol was at a 49 on the show last week, 50 1/3. So kind of a tale of two tapes. The near-dated vol breathing a little bit of a slight sigh of relief. The little bit longer-term vol getting a little bit spicier out there, which you can argue is probably merited given the fact that Bitcoin vol has been somewhat anemic for some time. So given all this action, all this movement out here, you could probably argue Bitcoin vol needs a little bit more juice, and it got a little bit more juice this week. Out to the skew. Now, this is interesting, listeners. This is where we tend to peer into the tea leaves a little bit, into our crystal balls, see what the options market is pricing in for future movement, listeners. And last week on the show, as you might imagine, things were looking pretty dire. The skew was -7 3/4. It's still pretty dire. It's still pretty bearish, but coming back to earth a little bit. It's -5 1/4 now. So it's clawed back, if you will, 2.5 points from the precipice there. Obviously, things got a lot lower during the great nadir out there, listeners. In fact, well, the one-day skew was -20.5, but we don't look into that. That gets kind of wild. One day Bitcoin skew, listeners. The lowest the weekly skew got was about almost -8.5, about -8.43. And then, of course, we have recovered a wee bit out there since. So interesting to see how the evolution of that skew, the monthly skew, -5.2 on our last show, still hanging out at about that level, actually slightly more, -5.3. So that's kind of interesting. Haven't seen a enormous clawback in the monthly skew yet. And the long-term skew, perhaps the most alarming to the hodlers out there, was -2.1. That already in and of itself is notable because we've seen, since these options really were listed, the premium was to the upside. Now that premium, that concern is to the downside. And it is growing. It was -2.1 on the show last week, -3.15. So longer term skew, not exactly painting a super rosy picture, but we'll see, at least for right now. The selling has abated, listeners. Out to IBIT we go. IBIT obviously has been wearing it of late. It's at 50 1/3 as we kicked off the show. That puts it down about 1.5 points, pretty much exactly from where it was this time last week. It did sell off, obviously, much lower. Last Friday, it got down to, looks like, about a 47, pretty much exactly, before rebounding to where it is today. So IBIT hitting a new near-term low, obviously not a 52-week low. That came back in the big sell-off in April. Not quite there yet, but that was right a little bit shy of a 43, 42.98. But within that ballpark, certainly enough to make the hodlers sweat out there. This name has been putting up some numbers for a while. That is continuing. The ADV is now over 1 million, 1.01 million contracts. That is wild paper, up another 84,000 from this time last week. So now if you're wondering, VIX and IBIT are pretty much neck and neck for ADV right now. So that shows you what a seminal product IBIT has become on the options front. Today, threatening that already, 860,000 contracts, and we're doing the show a little early. So I have to wonder, I have to think it's going to hit that 1 million level pretty easy. 30-day vol hanging out at pretty much a 52, pretty much unchanged on the week out there, listeners. If you're wondering what is being slung out there right now in IBIT, what are the hot trades? It's like the hot trade today is the March 65 call, going up 34,000 times today for prices about $1.61. Looks like paper mostly selling those, and it could potentially be closing. So someone could be bailing on some upside, deciding, 65 by March, maybe a little bit too rich. Maybe they're taking advantage of this recent turn back to the upside to get out while the getting is good. $1.61, listeners. And number two, we got about 22,000 of the D53 haps expiring on the 5th for 67 cents. Looks like paper was probably buying those. So interesting range. Those are opening, by the way, but looks like might be closing on those March 65s out there, listeners. So it looks like they might have opened those Marches not that long ago for $1.79 to about $1.85 back on November 21st. So if they're bailing on them already, they kind of ran out of optimism pretty quick. They were definitely buying them then for about $1.79 to $1.85. They could be adding to them, or they could have bailed on them. Looks like they sold them today, so it's like maybe they gave up the ghost and say, take our hit, 20 odd cents, and get the heck out of Dodge. Live to fight another day. Interesting stuff out there. Maybe not what the Bulls want to hear. What the Bulls do want to hear, maybe there's a little bit of a turnaround in Mara, and that is the case. $11 right now. It's only down 25 cents on the week now, which is interesting. Of course, in the great nadir of last week coming into today, it was looking pretty rough. 971. That is pretty much a new 52-week low for Mara. That gets below the level that it hit back in the sell-off back in April, listeners. So kind of interesting stuff. The ADV is 324. That actually is down 16,000 on the week, putting up nearly 200,000 contracts today. The hot option out there, 14, nearly 15,000 of the 11 calls expiring this Friday. So average price for these is about 28 cents. Obviously looking decent right now. They could have been closing, though. There is a lot of OI on this strike. Also, the 10 puts expiring this week, going up by 8,600 times. Average price for these around 23, 24, 25 cents. I will admit, maybe I dabbled in a few of those to the dark side earlier today as well. So maybe I'll talk more about that on our pro side for options oddities tomorrow. Tune in if you want to talk about some Mara put slinging and everything else out there. The ADV is, again, 324, down about 16,000 contracts. But now it's time for us to keep on rolling with this Just the Facts, ma'am edition. It is time to explore the altcoin universe.
It's time to move beyond Bitcoin and find out what's moving the rest of the crypto marketplace. It's time to boldly venture into the altcoin universe.
All right, everybody, welcome to the altcoin universe, the portion of the show where we explore everything outside of the big dog, which is BTC, except for right now. And surprise, surprise, it cost you a little bit less to break into the top 10 this week than it did last week. Last week, it was $16.7 billion to break into the top 10. That got you to our old pal Cardano. This week cost you about $15.3 billion to break in the top 10. So coming off another 1.4, almost $1.5 billion. That still gets you to Cardano, though, coming in number 10. Number 9, our old pal Doge, $23.1 billion. Oh, Doge, we barely knew you. Now Doge is gone from the government, it sounds like, out there. So maybe not a lot of love for Doge right now. Number 8, it's Tron. $26.2 billion for the number 8 spot. Whatever love they got from that movie, short-lived as it was, kind of gone as well. Number 7, USD Coin, $74.25 billion. Number 6, it's Solana, $76.8 billion. Number 5, it's BNB, $119.3. Number 4, it's XRP, $113.2 billion. Number 3, it's Tether, $184.3 billion. Number 2, it's ETH, $357.5 billion, and the big dog BTC, $1.76 trillion. That's down from $1.83 trillion on the show last week. But out to the one I know a lot of you are fixated on, it's ETH. And ETH has been obviously on a pretty wild journey since our last show, listeners. Coming into the start of the show right now, it has pretty much stabilized. It was 3,009 on our show last week, 2,970 coming in to start of the show today. So down a whopping 39 handles. Obviously, it got much lower, right around close to the 27.5 level over the weekend. So that was really starting to spook some people. Giving up all his gains for the year and then some, not exactly what the ETH bulls wanted. So clawing some of that back, getting back to the 3K level out there in ETH land right now. Vol-wise, it was looking spicy on the weekly vol front last week, 83 1/3, coming down to 75 this week. That's kind of a trend we're seeing across the vol board right now, with the exception of the long-term stuff. I was 75 3/4 on the 30-day vol last week, down to 74.5 right now. So coming in slightly, again, a little bit of that return to the 3K level or close to it, maybe alleviating some concerns, maybe folks taking a little bit of a pause out there on the vol front. Obviously, still a much higher vol level than we're talking about in Bitcoin, but coming back to earth ever so slightly, with the exception of the 180-day vol. That was 72.5 on our last show, 73 right now, so ticking up a wee bit, which is, again, kind of interesting and maybe not a great sign for the future. We'll see. We'll see what the Skew has in store for us, listeners. See what the Skew is telling us. Out to the weekly Skew was negative 8.3 on the show last week. Obviously, that we've reverted now and come back to the 3,000 level. That weekly skew has come back a little bit. It's negative 5.3 right now. So clawing back about 3 points out there on the weekly skew front. Let's run the same analysis, shall we, listeners? Let's go back to the Amber Data platform. You can check it out for yourselves, amberdata.io. And let's go check out the skew, shall we? See how crazy things got in the great sell-off on Friday heading into the weekend. Looks like the one-day skew was almost negative 25 again. One-day skew is kind of a nonsense thing, but interesting if you're doing intraday trading. Weekly vol, that's where we're looking, listeners. Got all the way down to negative 9 3/4 heading into the weekend. So again, things were looking kind of dire. Obviously, that has mitigated now. Weekly skew back to a negative 5.3. Still very bearish, but coming back off the precipice a wee bit. Same deal on the 30-day vol, negative 4.7 on the show last week, negative 3.1 today. And going out to where the hodlers hang out, we still had a bit of a positive premium on the show last week. I know that's surprising to people. It was very modest. Don't get too excited. It was positive 0.65. That is almost all gone now. There's still a slight positive premium. It means there's still a little bit of love for the calls, listeners. Positive 0.25. I have a feeling some of that's still the fact that we just clawed back to 3,000. If we were continuing to sell off or hanging out around that 27.5 level, I don't know how much juice would be left in that call wing. As it is right now, there's not much left, listeners. But you can hang your hat on something. That's something the Bitcoin folks can't. There is no juice to those calls right now. Let's run through a few of these other hot names out here in the altcoin universe, and we'll get out here for this Just the Facts, ma'am week. Let you get back to your shortened holiday trading week, listeners. Good old Bitminer, a.k.a. B-Meaner. Easy for me to say, BMNR. 30.15 when we kicked off the show, down about 0.6 of a point out there. Putting up nearly 250,000 contracts, 242 on the tape. So a decent options player, up about 9,000 contracts from last week. Putting up over 200,000 as the show had already started today. Again, this is an earlier show, so probably going to hit, if not exceed, that ADV today. 30-day vol in BMNR, 106%. It's down 14 points from where it was this time last week. The hot trade in BMNR looks like it's nearly 10,000 of the 30 calls expiring this Friday. Average price for these, 83 cents. So obviously they need BMNR to continue that turnaround through the end of the week. That is opening flow. Also, the 32 is going up today about 6,800 times for 37 cents. They really need BMNR to kick it into high gear by the end of the week. And then Greg's beloved Circle. Circle's been on quite the odyssey since we chatted with Greg last. Has sold all the way off to $64 last week. Remember, this thing was over 200 not too long ago. I sold the 195 puts myself not that long ago. So this thing has come back to earth substantially. Of course, it did go public at $30 as well, so there's quite the range in there. Sold off to $64, now has rebounded somewhat in this second stage here at the beginning of the week, where it looks like crypto getting a bit of a breath of fresh air. 72.5 when we kicked off the show. That's still down from where it was last week. It was pretty much $75 on the show last week, so down about $2.5, but nowhere near as low as it got. Are you a believer in Circle? The way Greg and some others are out there, you think this is the Netflix of the stablecoin era? In which case, maybe you think you're getting a deal. Or hey, it's still over 2x the IPO price. Maybe you still think it's too overpriced. Putting up 64,000 contracts today. The ADV 155, up about 14,000 from this time last week. That 30-day vol is at a 79, actually down 8%, which is kind of interesting. Interesting too. Greg was talking last time on the show about his long-term, I think it was March. Was it a March put spread or actually a March bullish risk reversal? I think it was selling the 45-30 put spread and using that to buy some upside. Interesting stuff out there today, folks. Looks like they're hitting the bid on the 60 puts. 4,500 of those going up today for 13 cents. Opening paper, all of that pretty much sold to you out there. And you also have the 80 calls going up. Looks like paper buying those about 2,500 times today for 52 cents. So interesting. You got both extremes out there. Both of those expiring at the end of the week. Which would you rather do, listeners? Draw the line in the sand for the 60 puts or maybe lift the offer on some 80 calls? Interesting stuff. ETHZilla, let's face it, probably going the way of the dodo. 1035, down another 2 points on the week. Solana, 137.5 today. 130.13 last week, so gaining about almost $7.5 out there. Of course, Solana, another one that came under a lot of pressure since our last show, listeners. Got as low as close to that 125 level, about 127.5, which again is a level that I know a lot of people nibbled on last time. Have you re-nibbled Or do you have enough Solana right now and you want it to turn around? Or maybe if it doesn't, if it keeps going down, maybe you'll reallocate at some lower levels out there. Either way, clawing some back out there this week. XRP, almost 2.25, 223 today, 214 last week, up a whopping 9 cents. So Bill and his wife will be happy. Doge kind of treading water, 15.3 cents last week, 15.3 cents this week. Litecoin, 92.38 last week, 86.52. So they're coming for Litecoin this week. Down nearly $6, about 5.86. Cardano, 46.5 cents last week, 42.9 cents this week, so down about 3.6 cents. Polkadot, 269 last week, 236 today, so down 33 cents. And everyone's favorite Shiba Inu, man, not looking great. 1,000,000 zeros, 869 last week. This week, 1,000,000 zeros, 833. Before we get out of here, let's reveal the results of our big poll from last week as we head on into the crypto questions.
You've got questions about crypto. Who doesn't? It's time to find out the answers to your crypto questions.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Crypto Questions, a portion of the show where we shine a spotlight on you folks. You folks asked your questions out there as well. And let's see, last week we shined a spotlight on your asset allocation choices for the coming year. We said, quite simply, if you had to buy an at-the-money call, so take a bullish bet, listeners, throughout not just the end of this year, but the end of next year, all the way through to the end of 2026, which asset class are you choosing? We gave you 3 choices and the infamous other: Bitcoin, gold, the S&P 500, or other. We told you about the write-ins. We've had a lot of interesting ones out there. Some small crypto assets, VIX, all kinds of things percolating in the other. That's what makes the other so fascinating. But the other didn't take it, only 10%. 40% ended up taking it, listeners. Good old Bitcoin, topping the list. 40% of you coming in saying, if you want to allocate through the end of next year, Bitcoin is where you're doing it. Kind of interesting. Right behind it, 36.7% for gold. Only 13.3% choosing the S&P right now. That is kind of fascinating in and of itself. And as we mentioned, 10% going the way of the other, including a lot of great write-ins for smaller little tokens we don't have a chance to really talk about here on the show too often. Make sure you're following us at Options if you too want to play the home game. That's going to do it for us on the Crypto Rundown. Just the Facts, ma'am, edition on this shortened holiday week. Back again after the closing bell today to hold court on what lit up the tape on the Hot Options Report. Coming back tomorrow for the European Market Brief. Should be a fun one, as well as for all of our pro friends. Get kind of a combo Q&A oddities episode going on tomorrow. Should be fun. Wednesday, you're still going to get a dose, even though folks are traveling, still going to get a dose of your favorite shows out there, including, of course, the Hot Options Report. A little bit of futures rundown action for you folks as well. Off again on Thursday and Friday, of course, and we're back again on Monday to talk some more crypto derivatives on the Crypto Rundown. See you then, and oh yeah, stay safe out there, everybody.
The Crypto Rundown is brought to you by Amber Data. If you're entering the digital asset class, you'll need access to granular on-chain and market data from multiple venues to power research, trading, risk management, and compliance. Amber Data delivers comprehensive data and insights into blockchain networks, crypto markets, and decentralized finance, empowering financial institutions to apply traditional finance methods to digital assets. Amber Data eliminates the infrastructure setup, integration challenges, and maintenance headaches to access digital asset data, reducing cost and time to market to enter the digital asset class. Learn more and download their digital asset data guide at www.amberdata.io. The Crypto Rundown is brought to you by Amber Data. If you're entering the digital asset class, you'll need access to granular on-chain and market data from multiple venues to power research, trading, risk management, and compliance. Amber Data delivers comprehensive data and insights into blockchain networks, crypto markets, and decentralized finance, empowering financial institutions to apply traditional finance methods to digital assets. Amber Data eliminates the infrastructure setup, integration challenges, and maintenance headaches to access digital asset data, reducing cost and time to market to enter the digital asset class. Learn more and download their digital asset data guide at www.amberdata.io.